You're listening to 5 O'Clock Shadow on the Pacifica Radio Network, originating at WBAI. I'm Robert Knight in New York. We just heard Pete Seeger, Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, a song that at one time was about precipitous wars launched by American executives. It might as well also refer to the condition of nuclear power plants in Nebraska, standing on the verge of a possible deluge from the overflooding Missouri River. To discuss that and other larger issues of nuclear power, we are now joined by Harvey Wasserman of Solartopia and many other new projects. Harvey, let's just begin with what you consider the state of the nuclear art in America, if not the world today.
Well, it's pathetic. I mean, I couldn't even grace it by calling it an art. We have about 440 reactors worldwide, although the number has dropped considerably since March 11th because 6 are down and gone at Fukushima, although what's going on there is anybody's guess. 7 have shut in Germany by fiat of the government, and another 10 are going to go down there. And now we have these 2 reactors in the United States, in Nebraska, Cooper and Fort Calhoun, which are threatened by floods from the Missouri River. It's very hard to get a straight story. We don't know exactly what's happening there. The government and the owners of the plants are not particularly trustworthy or forthcoming, and so we can only pray that the floodwaters don't pour into those one or both of those reactors and cause a major disaster.
Auxiliary problems at those plants have included the release of sewage water, the extramission of oil and petroleum products from a fire practice area in and around them, or one of them. And all of this, plus Fukushima, has created a sense of crisis around the world, and certainly the uncompletely acknowledged release of radioactivity into the environment. These problems have caused some very momentous reactions in a number of nations, including in Germany, where there's a legislative impulse to back off on the expansion of nuclear power, and more recently in Italy, where a plebiscite got a 57% vote of the public to not renew the installation of nuclear power plants there. Is this a watershed moment?
I think it is, actually, for 2 reasons. First of all, the Fukushima accident is the worst thing that's ever happened on this planet, at least caused by human beings. The previous one was Chernobyl, but this is worse. We have 6 reactors there in uncertain status. 3 have definitely melted, and there is radioactive, molten radioactive material in the bottoms, even burning through the bottoms of units 1, 2, and 3 at Fukushima. Unit 4, there was a spent fuel fire. We don't know if that's out. And then units 5 and 6, which were shut at the time of the tsunami and earthquake, have also been compromised. We're not exactly sure how. As I said, the only thing we know for sure is that the government and the utility company are lying. What's really disturbing is that I don't think the government and the utility company actually know what's going on. And so, I think this accident is well beyond the technical capabilities of human beings to control it. Even at this point in time, if just one of the reactors at Fukushima got significantly worse, they would have to pull all the workers out of Fukushima and just sit and hope that those 6 reactors somehow come under control. And this is not because of the endangerment, the long-term endangerment of the workers. It's because it could get so radioactive there they literally could not work and would just start dropping dead on site. So this is beyond anything we've had happen, and the rest of the world has taken note. Since Fukushima, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and Japan and Israel have all announced that they will not build new nuclear plants, and the Germans and Japanese are both talking, as are the Swiss actually, about phasing out many, if not all, of the reactors they have. This is unprecedented. It's a big deal. And it's accompanied, very importantly, by a turning point in renewable energy. This is actually the moment of these few months where solar and wind and tidal and many of the other solar-topian technologies have turned the corner and are clearly cheaper than nuclear power and even cheaper than fossil fuels now. In fact, General Electric that left-wing radical organization has come out and said that within 5 years, solar panels will be cheaper than fossil fuels, that is a major deal. But right now, we're seeing reports in all the major financial media that solar has transcended nuclear, and that if you're a straight-out capitalist and you've got $10 billion, which you could conceivably, not really, but conceivably build a nuclear plant, and you're really just in it for the money, you would be better off investing in solar. Solar has really turned that corner now, and so it's a double turning point. It's the worst nuclear collapse in human history, coupled with the final real breakthrough of renewable technologies. So I think this spring of 2011 will be marked in the long term as marking the real final definitive decline of nuclear power.
Well, with the reversals in the nations that you mentioned about turning away from the continuation or expansion of nuclear power, we have in the United States a policy pushed forward by President Obama saying that the nation needs to increase its nuclear power plants. He's offering the industry tens of billions of dollars in insurance guarantees for the construction of new power plants and claiming that nuclear power is green. How do you assess that policy in the face of what's happening in other parts of the world?
Well, it's a complete abomination. I mean, the Obama administration has been derelict in its duty. Right after Fukushima, he got on national television and said, don't worry about it, the radiation's not going to harm anybody here. And by the way, we're continuing to push nuclear plants. Well, the radiation has definitely come here from Fukushima. It was measured on the West Coast within a week. It's been all over the United States. There's been radiation in milk. There's some who believe, and this is bitterly contested, that there's a link to heightened infant death rates on the West Coast. It is argued over, but there is precedent for it. So the administration really has fallen down here terribly at the feet of the nuclear power industry. There should be in this country a national radiation monitoring system where you can go online and find out, easily and quickly where radiation is coming down and what kind it is and what steps to take. And the administration has really done everything it can to take the public eye off of Fukushima. And now there's a virtual news blackout on what's happening with these two potentially flooded reactors in Nebraska. It's as if the media has been ordered not to cover it at all. But it's a very, very serious situation with the flooding and Fort Calhoun and Cooper being very close to being underwater. This is serious stuff, and this administration has just rolled over and is doing everything the nuclear industry wants it to do. It's very disturbing. In addition to which, Obama made a very solemn promise to put the solar panels back on the White House roof that Jimmy Carter put on in the 1970s that were ripped off by Ronald Reagan. Obama said they'd be back up by the spring of 2011, and today's the solstice, so, we don't see him there. He's been terrible on this, and it's really deeply disturbing.
Well, I am happy to say that this program, 5 O'Clock Shadow, has been covering such issues and most recently has achieved more than 160,000 viewings and listenings on the Internet about the situation in Nebraska, Fukushima, and elsewhere. And you yourself are doing great work with Solartopia and with your new organization. We're going to talk about a new program that you're doing, but just to continue the thread that we're on at the moment, you spoke about the policy of the Obama administration in continuing a nuclear expansion. Let's look at the regulatory side. We have seen a spate of challenges and renewal of old reactors across the United States for decades well beyond their design lifetime. What about the mechanical, the official, the regulatory bodies? Is there any way to influence their considerations in pushing ahead with something that would presumably become more risky the older and more brittle the equipment becomes?
Well, we refer to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as no real chance or nobody really cares. The idea of extending the licensing on these reactors, for example, the Indian Point reactors north of New York City, just 35 miles north of Manhattan. I mean, it's those reactors opened in the 70s, for God's sakes. How many people listening in are driving a 40-year-old automobile, and then they want them to go for 60 or 80? I mean, these nuclear plants, they're embrittled. There are tremendous internal problems. Not a single reactor now operating in the United States could be licensed today by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and yet they're relicensing these old ones. There's no way to evacuate New York City from Indian Point. The reactors are very close to earthquake faults, as are many in the United States. We have 4 reactors in California that could be, like Fukushima, damaged by an earthquake and a tsunami. Those are 2 at Diablo Canyon and 2 at San Onofre. This is just, a horrific situation, and we, as a democracy, should not be standing for it. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has actually just recently stepped over a very serious line. The people of Vermont have essentially voted the legislature to shut the Vermont Yankee plant, and now the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is supposed to be a dispassionate regulator, has asked the Justice Department to intervene on the side of the owners of the nuclear plant. This is completely inappropriate and really completely destroys their credibility as any kind of regulatory agency. So these are serious questions and serious problems that have to be dealt with. We're going to have to find a way outside of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to get these reactors under control.
Harvey, you bring us optimistic news about the viability of solar power, wind, and geothermal, and others. And I'd just like to dwell on what may be an intractable problem about the transition from nuclear power in the United States specifically. How does one decommission a plant? How expensive is that? How hazardous does the territory remain afterwards? And what happens to all that still warming spent fuel?
Well, you got a mouthful there. I mean, the last question, the spent fuel, is there's no solution. I mean, the only thing that's being recommended now is to put the fuel in boxes and let it sit there, and hopefully nothing will happen to it. I mean, it's a wing and a prayer at best. And, the optimism on renewables is really coming from all the trade journals. I post these articles at a website called nukefree.org, NUKEFREE.org. And by the way, we've just announced a major new concert in California on August 7th. It's the revival of Muse, Musicians United for Safe Energy, which did 5 legendary concerts in Madison Square Garden in 1979. And so we're on August 7th, Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Brown, Crosby, Stills, Nash, John Hall, and many others will be performing in the Shoreline Arena near San Francisco. And back in that day, in 79, we said, well, someday we'll have solar energy if we stop building nukes. And pretty much we slowed the industry way down, certainly in the United States. But renewable energy has come on. I mean, I read Bloomberg and Forbes and all the trade journals in the energy world, and I got to say that there's just no doubt that the price of renewables has plummeted. I mean, I just read a piece today that says that they expect, and this is a trade journal, that they expect the cost of solar cells to drop in half within the next 2 years. And, there's now many, many millions of dollars being invested, actually billions, in renewables. And what you're going to have soon, very soon, is a critical mass of large corporations that are vested in renewables.
So there are actually 2 green movements, one being of renewable energy, the other being the green dollar bill on Wall Street.
Yes, that's right. And, the fact is that the economics have really turned, and they're really working in our favor. And the solar-topian revolution that will give us a totally green-powered Earth is very much upon us now. And I have to say that the decisions by Germany and Japan to go to renewables and to stop building nuclear plants was not just because of Fukushima. I mean, you have very large corporations with a lot of power in those countries, and I guarantee you that the executives at Siemens, which is deeply involved in solar, and Mitsubishi, which is in wind, and Sharp, which is in solar, and Enercon, which is in wind, those companies and others like them are no longer interested in nuclear and deeply invested in renewables. And I think the German corporate elite looked at the numbers and said, basically, nuclear is over. We want to jump ahead of the curve. And you watch, 10 years from now, you can have me on your show, and we'll be talking about how Germany became the richest country on earth, not just because they went totally renewable themselves inside Germany, but because they came with this decision to dominate what will be the biggest global industry in the history of humankind, which is especially solar, but the conversion to a renewable-based economy.
Harvey Wasserman of NukeFree.org is also the author of Solartopia, an introduction by Bobby Kennedy Jr. And also, you might have me on your show because I understand you have a new project called the Solartopia Green Power Hour.
Yes. It's on the Talktainment Radio Network, talktainment.com. So far, it's an internet-based radio show, but we're looking for outlets. And I'll have my second show tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, but you can certainly find it on the web after that. But we're not planning to compete with Pacifica.
Well, we are flying in the same direction, and I thank you for joining us today on 5 o'clock Shadow, Harvey Wasserman. We thank for our production today our engineer, Tony Ryan, as well as the news department, and Tony Bates, Kathy Davis, Bertold Reimers, and you, the listeners who support this and other public radio stations. For further information, give us an email at theshadow@wbai.org or drop a line to 5 o'clock Shadow, WBAI, 120 Wall Street, New York, 10005. I'm Robert Knight in New York for 5 o'clock Shadow.